The clock read 1:27 a.m. when I heard the familiar click of Lucy's BMW in our driveway. My wife was home from her 4-day finance conference in Charlotte, a trip that had initially concerned me because of its timing, right after our argument about her long work hours. I set down the Stephen King novel I'd been pretending to read and listened to her approach the front door. Her heels clicked across the hardwood foyer, unusually energetic for someone who'd just driven 3 hours. The door burst open, and there was Lucy, radiant, almost glowing in the dim light of our entryway. Her platinum blonde hair was styled differently, no longer in the professional bun I was used to seeing. Instead, it cascaded down her shoulders in loose waves that caught the light. Her emerald green dress hugged her figure in a way that seemed deliberately seductive, and her smile stretched wider than I'd seen in months. "Daniel," she called out, her voice a melody of excitement. "You'll never believe what happened. The Jameson account finally came through, and they're talking about making me the lead for their entire East Coast division." I forced myself to stand, approaching her with what I hoped looked like enthusiasm. "That's fantastic, Luce. Congratulations." She practically vibrated with energy as she kicked off her stilettos, sending them flying across our tile floor with careless abandon. Her phone buzzed in her designer clutch, and she quickly checked it before tucking it away with a guilty glance in my direction. "Sorry, just work stuff. Brad's being a pain about the quarterly projections." But her tone didn't match the irritation she claimed. If anything, she seemed amused. I watched her move through our house with a newfound grace, as if she were floating rather than walking. Everything about her demeanor screamed change, not just happiness, but transformation. This wasn't the exhausted wife who usually returned from business trips, complaining about bad hotel coffee and stuffy conference rooms. "Want to tell me more about the conference?" I asked, settling on our white leather couch and patting the space beside me. Lucy hesitated, her fingers playing with the hem of her dress. "Actually, I'm beat. Mind if I unpack and shower first? We can catch up in the morning." Before I could respond, she was already heading upstairs, taking the steps 2 at a time, with an energy that defied her claimed exhaustion. I heard the muffled sound of her humming from our bedroom, a song I didn't recognize, but one that clearly held special meaning for her. I remained on the couch, my mystery novel forgotten on the coffee table. Something wasn't adding up. The Lucy who left for Charlotte had been tense, complaining about the tedious nature of finance conferences and dreading the networking events. The woman who just walked through our door acted like she discovered the meaning of life itself. My phone buzzed with a news alert, but I ignored it, too focused on the sounds coming from upstairs. The shower was running, but beneath it, I could hear her phone receiving messages, multiple vibrations in quick succession. Lucy never got that many texts unless there was a work emergency, and those usually left her stressed, not euphoric. When the shower stopped, an unusual silence fell over our house. No more humming, no more phone notifications, just an eerie quiet that made the hairs on my neck stand up. I checked the time, 2:14 a.m. This wasn't normal behavior for Lucy, who was always meticulous about her nighttime routine and usually chatted about her trip immediately upon returning. Unable to resist, I climbed the stairs, each step creaking under my weight. As I approached our bedroom, I heard her whispering. My heart rate accelerated. Who was she talking to at this hour? I know. It's complicated, but I'll figure it out. Just need more time." I froze outside the door, straining to hear more. Her voice dropped even lower, almost inaudible. Then I heard the distinct sound of her hastily ending a call and shuffling papers or fabric. "Daniel, that you?" Her voice carried a forced cheerfulness that sounded hollow. I stepped into the room. Lucy stood by her suitcase, still in her silk bathrobe, her face a canvas of conflicting emotions. Surprise, guilt, and something else I couldn't quite identify. In her hand was a hotel receipt that she quickly crumpled and shoved into her robe pocket. "Just organizing my receipts for the expense report," she explained, but her eyes avoided mine. "These conferences always leave me with so much paperwork." "Who were you talking to?" I asked, keeping my tone casual despite the tension building in my chest. "Oh, that? Just leaving a voicemail for Brad. You know how he is. Always needs updates at ridiculous hours." She turned away, busying herself with unpacking. "Could you grab my phone charger from my car? I think I left it there." I knew evasion when I saw it. After 8 years of marriage, Lucy's tells were as familiar as my own reflection. The way she touched her neck when nervous, the speed at which she spoke when hiding something, the inability to maintain eye contact when lying. "Sure," I said, deciding to play along for now. Be right back. As I headed for the garage, my mind raced with possibilities. Was it really just work stress making her act so strangely? Or had something or someone in Charlotte changed her? I unlocked her BMW and immediately spotted the charging cable dangling from the center console. But as I reached for it, something else caught my eye. A parking ticket stuck under her visor from the Magnolia Resort and Spa, time-stamped yesterday at 11:47 p.m. But Lucy had texted me she was having dinner with clients at 9 and would turn in early. My hands shook slightly as I examined the ticket. The resort was nearly an hour outside Charlotte's city center. What was she doing there so late? I quickly took a photo with my phone before putting the ticket back exactly where I found it. When I returned to the bedroom, Lucy was already in bed, her back turned to me as she pretended to sleep. I placed the charger on her nightstand and lay down, staring at the ceiling as questions multiplied in my mind. The next morning, Lucy was gone before I woke. A note on the kitchen counter read, "Early meeting. Coffee's made. Love you, Al." Her handwriting looked different somehow, more hurried, less careful. I poured myself coffee and opened my laptop, unable to shake the need to understand what was happening to my marriage. I started with the basics, checking our shared credit card account. 3 transactions from Charlotte stood out immediately. 2 from the Magnolia Resort and Spa, and 1 from a jewelry store called Precious Moments. The resort charges were for rooms, one on Thursday night and another on Saturday. But Lucy had called me from her hotel both nights, describing the standard Hilton where the conference was held. The jewelry store purchase was for $847.32, made on Friday afternoon. When was the last time Lucy bought herself expensive jewelry? She usually preferred simple pieces, claiming anything flashy was unprofessional. A cold dread settled in my stomach. I needed more information, but I couldn't confront her with just circumstantial evidence. Lucy was a corporate lawyer. She'd demand proof, not suspicions. That evening, when she returned from work, I tried a different approach. "How was your day?" "Busy. The Jameson deal is more complicated than expected." She didn't look up from her phone, her thumbs flying across the screen. "You seem distracted lately. Everything okay?" She finally looked at me, her expression guarded. "Just work pressure. You know how it gets. Maybe we should plan a weekend getaway. Reconnect a bit." I watched her reaction carefully. Her phone buzzed, and her eyes flicked to the screen. A small smile played at her lips before she caught herself. "Actually, I might need to go to Atlanta next weekend. The Jameson people want to meet in person." "Atlanta? I thought they were based in Charlotte." "They're expanding, opening a regional office there." Her answer came too quickly, too rehearsed. That night, as Lucy showered, I did something I swore I'd never do. I checked her phone. Her passcode was still our anniversary date, 0815. Some things apparently hadn't changed. I went straight to her messages. There were texts from unknown numbers, but nothing suspicious in her main thread. Then I noticed a messaging app I didn't recognize. Whisper Chat. When I opened it, I found a conversation with someone named T. "Can't wait to see you again. Atlanta will be perfect. No one I know there." I hate lying to him, but what choice do I have? It's easier this way. He'd never understand. The timestamps on the most recent messages were from yesterday, long after I'd gone to bed. My hands trembled as I scrolled through more of their conversation. The intimacy between them was undeniable. Private jokes, references to shared memories I wasn't part of, plans for future meetings. I quickly memorized what I could before locking the phone and placing it back on the charger. When Lucy emerged from the bathroom, I pretended to be absorbed in a basketball game on TV. "Coming to bed?" she asked, already slipping under the covers. "Soon. Just want to finish this quarter." The following day, I took a sick day from my job at the architecture firm. I needed time to think, to plan my next move. I called my buddy Mike, a private investigator I'd met through a client. "Mike, it's Daniel. I need your help with something personal." We met at a diner in the next town over, where I wouldn't accidentally run into Lucy or anyone from her firm. Mike listened without judgment as I laid out the evidence I'd gathered. The hotel receipts, the jewelry purchase, the mysterious messaging app, the inconsistencies in her stories. "You want me to tail her?" he asked, stirring sugar into his coffee. "I want to know the truth. I need to understand what's happening in my own marriage." Mike nodded, sliding a business card across the table. "Write down everything. Her schedule, regular routes, any suspicious behavior you've noticed. I'll start tomorrow." That night, I decided to test Lucy one more time. Remember how we talked about that couples counseling? I found someone good, Dr. Melissa Chen. She has great reviews. Lucy's fork froze halfway to her mouth. Counseling? I thought we were past that argument. Just thinking it might help with communication. We've both been so stressed lately. I don't have time for counseling right now, Daniel. The Jameson account is critical. After things settle down, maybe. I studied her face. The guilt was there, buried beneath layers of practiced composure. But it was there. The following afternoon, Mike called. Daniel, you sitting down? Your wife's not at her office. She left around noon and drove to a restaurant on the other side of town. The Riverside Grill. She meeting someone? Yeah, tall guy, early 30s, wearing an expensive suit. They seem familiar with each other. My chest tightened. Can you get a photo? Already done. Sending them to your email now. I opened my laptop with shaking hands. The photos loaded slowly, each pixel revealing another piece of a puzzle I was afraid to complete. There was Lucy. Laugh. The images showed Lucy with a man I didn't recognize. Attractive, confident, the kind of guy who probably played golf at country clubs and drove a Tesla. In one photo, he was touching her arm in a gesture too intimate for a business meeting. In another, they were sharing a dessert, their heads close together as they conversed. I needed more proof. That weekend, when Lucy announced she was indeed going to Atlanta for business, I told her I had to work too. A client demanded weekend revisions to blueprints. Instead, I followed her to the airport. She wasn't flying alone. The man from the restaurant photos was there, dressed casually but expensively. They met at the gate, embracing with an ease that came from familiarity. I stayed far enough away to remain undetected, but close enough to confirm what I already suspected. They flew to Atlanta on separate tickets, but sat together in first class. Through the window, I watched them laugh and touch hands across the armrest. Lucy kept looking around nervously, as if worried someone might recognize her. The man seemed unbothered, confident in their deception. I took a later flight to Atlanta, booking a room at a different hotel than the one Lucy had mentioned. Mike would continue surveillance from our end while I tracked her movements in Atlanta. The plan was simple: document everything, gather irrefutable evidence, then confront her when she returned. I needed to know who this man was, how long this had been going on, and what she planned to do about our marriage. Saturday morning, I positioned myself at a cafe across from the Ritz-Carlton, where Lucy claimed to be staying. At 8:47 a.m., she emerged, not from the Ritz, but from the Four Seasons down the street. The man was with her, his arm around her waist possessively. They hailed a taxi. I followed in a rental car, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. They drove to the Atlanta Botanical Garden, where they strolled like any normal couple, holding hands, sharing kisses, taking selfies. I snapped photos with my phone's zoom lens, each image feeling like a betrayal times 10. When was the last time Lucy and I had visited a garden together? When had she last looked at me the way she gazed at this stranger? By noon, I had enough evidence to fill a divorce attorney's filing cabinet. I returned to my hotel, my mind a storm of emotions. Part of me wanted to confront them immediately, to make a scene at their romantic lunch, but the rational part of my brain knew I needed to approach this strategically. Back in my hotel room, I called an old colleague who practiced family law in Connecticut. Sarah answered on the second ring. Daniel? What a surprise. Sarah, I need your advice. Strictly confidential. Of course. What's going on? I explained the situation, trying to keep my voice steady as I recounted the evidence I'd gathered. Sarah listened patiently before responding. In Connecticut, adultery is grounds for divorce if you can prove it. You've got photographs, credit card statements, the works. That's solid documentation. But I need to ask, do you want to save your marriage, or are you preparing for divorce? I don't know yet. I need to understand the full scope before I can decide anything. Fair enough, but my advice? See a therapist first. Process this emotionally before making legal decisions. These photos, they're going to haunt you if you're not prepared. I booked a return flight for Sunday evening, the same as Lucy's scheduled arrival. At the airport, I watched from a distance as she and the man said their goodbyes. They kissed openly now, no longer afraid of discovery. Lucy's body language spoke of comfort and familiarity. This wasn't a new affair. On the flight home, I sat 5 rows behind her, observing her behavior. She spent the entire flight texting, occasionally smiling at her phone screen. Once, she turned around and I quickly ducked behind the in-flight magazine. My heart raced, but she didn't notice me. When we landed, I waited until she collected her luggage and headed for her car, before making my way to mine. I arrived home 15 minutes before her, just enough time to compose myself and pretend I'd been working on blueprints all weekend. "Hey," she called out as she entered, her voice carrying forced brightness. "How was your weekend?" "Productive. And yours? How was Atlanta?" "Exhausting," she said, avoiding my eyes. "But we made progress with the Jameson account. They want to meet again next month." "Atlanta again?" "Maybe. They're flexible about location." I nodded, watching her unpack. Every movement seemed calculated to hide something. The way she quickly sorted through her clothes, the speed with which she whisked away her toiletry bag. "I'm going to shower," she announced. "Then maybe we can order dinner?" "Sure. I'll order from Giuseppe's." When she disappeared into the bathroom, I seized my opportunity. In her overnight bag, I found what I was looking for: a receipt from dinner at the Capitol Grill in Atlanta, for 2 people. Date and time corresponded perfectly with when I'd photographed them at the restaurant. But beneath the receipts, I discovered something that made my blood run cold. A small jewelry box from Tiffany & Co. Inside was a platinum bracelet engraved with initials: L+T, T, the person from her messages. Now I had a name, or at least an initial. I carefully photographed everything and replaced it exactly as I'd found it. When Lucy emerged from the shower, I was back in the living room, menu in hand. "What sounds good tonight?" "You choose. I'm not really hungry anyway." Over the next week, I observed Lucy more carefully than ever before. She was making more personal calls, always stepping away for privacy. Her business trips increased, 3 in the next month, all to cities I could easily verify had no connection to the Jameson account. Mike continued his surveillance, identifying the man as Trent McDonald, a divorced finance executive who'd recently moved to Stamford. He worked for a competing firm, specializing in mergers and acquisitions. Records showed he'd been divorced for 6 months, with no children. "They meet at the Marriott downtown every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon," Mike reported. "Room 712. She pays cash each time." Tuesday afternoon, I played hooky from work again. This time, I borrowed my brother's Honda so Lucy wouldn't recognize my car. I parked at the Marriott and waited. At 2:30 p.m., Lucy's BMW pulled into the underground parking. 5 minutes later, Trent's Tesla followed. My chest felt tight as I watched them meet at the elevator, stealing a quick kiss before the doors closed. I gave them 10 minutes before taking the elevator myself, getting off at the 7th floor. Room 712 was at the end of the corridor. I stood there for a moment, my hand inches from the door, debating whether to knock and end this charade once and for all. But rationality prevailed. I returned to my car and waited. They emerged 2 hours later, both looking satisfied and disheveled. Lucy handed Trent something, an envelope, perhaps documents. He smiled and tucked it into his briefcase. That evening, Lucy acted completely normal, asking about my day, mentioning errands she needed to run, suggesting a weekend trip to Vermont to see the fall colors. The casual deception was almost admirable in its audacity. "Actually," I said, testing her, "a partner at work invited us to his beach house in the Hamptons next weekend. Thought it might be nice to accept." Her expression shifted slightly. Panic quickly masked. "Oh, I forgot to mention, I have another Atlanta trip coming up. Jameson wants to finalize some details. Can't someone else go? This will be good for us. I'm the lead on this account, Daniel. I can't pass it off to someone junior." I nodded, making a mental note to have Mike verify another Atlanta trip that probably didn't exist. The following night, while Lucy was supposedly working late, I drove past her office building. The parking garage was nearly empty, no sign of her BMW. I called her cell. "Hey, just checking in. How late will you be?" "Oh God, I'm sorry. Meant to text. The client invited us to dinner. Probably won't be home until 10 or 11. "Which client again?" "The Jameson people. They're in town unexpectedly." "Where are you going for dinner?" They're choosing. I'll have to get back to you." At 11:30 p.m., Lucy's car pulled into our driveway. She entered quietly, trying not to wake me. But I was sitting in the dark living room, lights off, waiting. "Daniel, you scared me." "Late night." "Yeah, sorry. Dinner ran long. Then we had to go over some documents at the hotel." "Which hotel were they staying at?" She hesitated for just a moment. "The Hilton downtown." I'd already called the Hilton. No Jameson client meeting rooms were booked. No corporate events scheduled. No out-of-town registrations under that name. "Must have been productive," I said, watching her face in the dim light from the kitchen. "Very, but I'm exhausted." Can we talk tomorrow? As she headed upstairs, I noticed a mark on her neck that hadn't been there this morning. Small, circular, unmistakably a hickey that she'd tried to cover with makeup. The next morning I called Sarah again. I think I need to move forward with divorce proceedings. You're certain? I collected more evidence. Photos, credit card statements, hotel records, witness testimony from a PI. It's been going on for at least 4 months, maybe longer. Okay, let's discuss your options. In Connecticut, you can file for no fault or for adultery. With your evidence, proving adultery won't be difficult. The question is how you want to proceed, quietly or aggressively. I don't want revenge, I want honesty, and I want out. Understood, I'll draw up the paperwork. Meanwhile, document everything but don't change your behavior. We want the filing to come as a surprise so she doesn't have time to hide assets or prepare counter-accusations. That weekend, Lucy announced her trip to Atlanta. By now, I knew the routine. Fake excitement, vague details, promises to call every night. I'll miss you, she said, kissing me goodbye at the door. Me too, I replied, meaning it despite everything. When her car disappeared around the corner, I made a decision. Instead of going to my office as planned, I drove to Mike's agency. Together, we went over every shred of evidence one final time, organizing it for my attorney. You sure about this? Mike asked, spreading photos across his desk. I looked at the images. My wife of 8 years laughing with another man, holding his hand, kissing him passionately in places she claimed to be conducting business. The woman I'd built a life with, planned a future with, had been living a double life for months. I'm sure. Monday evening, I received my wife's nightly call from Atlanta. How's your day going, honey? Busy. The Jameson deal is almost wrapped up. Might be home earlier than expected. That's great, I miss you. Miss you too. Daniel? Yeah? Never mind. I'll tell you when I get home. After she hung up, I stared at my phone, wondering what she'd been about to say. An apology? A confession? Or just another lie to add to the mountain between us? Wednesday morning, I called in sick again and met with Sarah to finalize the divorce paperwork. We decided to serve her on Friday evening when she returned from Atlanta, giving her the weekend to process and respond. Remember, Sarah advised, stay calm. Don't engage in arguments. Just hand her the papers and let her read them. If she wants to talk, fine. If not, give her space. Friday arrived with oppressive humidity and angry storm clouds, fitting for what was about to transpire. Lucy's text came at 4:30 p.m. Landing soon, home by 7. Let's order dinner in? At 7:15 p.m., her car pulled into the driveway. I sat in the living room, divorce papers on the coffee table in front of me. My hands were steady despite the drumming of my heart. She entered with her usual travel-worn energy, dropping her bags by the door. Daniel, I thought we could get tied tonight. She stopped when she saw me sitting in the semi-darkness, documents illuminated by a single lamp. What is this? Why do you have official papers out? I stood up slowly. Lucy, we need to talk about your trips to Atlanta. Her face paled, but she maintained composure. What about them? And about Trent McDonald? Now she went completely white. I don't know what you're talking about. I picked up the divorce petition and handed it to her. I think you do. She stared at the papers, her hands trembling slightly. Daniel, this is insane. You can't be serious. I have photos, Lucy, from Atlanta, from the Marriott downtown, from the Magnolia Resort. I have credit card records, hotel receipts, and witness testimony. I know about the Tiffany bracelet, the one engraved L+T. She sank onto the couch, still clutching the papers. How long have you known? Officially? About 2 weeks. Suspected? Months. Tears welled in her eyes, but I felt oddly unmoved. These weren't tears of genuine remorse. They were tears of being caught. I never meant for this to happen, she whispered. But it did happen. For months. Every fake business trip, every manufactured emergency meeting, every lie about staying late at the office, they all happened. It's complicated. No, I interrupted. It's not. You made choices. You chose to cheat. You chose to lie. You chose to create an entire fabricated life to cover your affair. There's nothing complicated about betrayal. She looked up at me, mascara beginning to streak down her cheeks. What do you want? I want you to stop lying. I want you to acknowledge what you've done, and I want a divorce. Daniel, please, can't we try to work this out? Go to counseling? Figure out what went wrong? What went wrong was you falling in love with someone else while still married to me. That's not something counseling can fix. She read through the papers more carefully now, her lawyer instincts taking over despite her emotional state. You're asking for the house? We'll split assets fairly. I'm not trying to destroy you financially, Lucy. I just want out of this marriage with my dignity intact. How am I supposed to explain this at work? My family? Everyone thinks we're happy. Maybe you should have thought about that before you started booking hotel rooms with Trent. Her phone buzzed. She instinctively reached for it, then stopped, realizing the implications. It's him, isn't it? I asked. She nodded slowly. Answer it. Tell him your husband knows everything. Daniel, answer it, Lucy, or I will. With shaking hands, she answered. Hey, no, I just got home. Trent, listen. My husband knows. About us. Everything. She paused, listening. I don't know. He's filing for divorce. I could hear his voice through the phone, agitated and concerned. Lucy's responses became shorter, non-committal. Finally, she ended the call. He wants to meet tomorrow to figure out what to do. You mean he wants to figure out how to minimize the impact on his career? Did he know I existed this whole time? She nodded again. I told him I was planning to ask for a divorce, that I just needed the right time. The right time never comes when you're building your exit strategy on lies, I said. You could have been honest months ago. Told me you'd fallen out of love, that you'd met someone else. We could have handled this maturely. I was scared, and honestly, part of me hoped it would fizzle out, that I could somehow keep both of you. Ah, so I was your safety net. That's not... I loved you, still do in a way. No, I said firmly. You loved the stability I represented, the comfortable life we built, the respectable marriage that looked good from the outside. But love doesn't involve this level of deception. We spent another hour talking in circles, her justifying, apologizing, making excuses, me asking direct questions and demanding honest answers. By the end, we both felt drained. I'll stay at Hannah's tonight, she said, referring to her sister who lived across town. Give us both some space. That's probably best. Before she left, she turned at the door. I really am sorry, Daniel. I never wanted to hurt you. You're right, I replied. You never wanted to hurt me, but you did it anyway, every single day for months. That's somehow worse than intending to. After she left, I called my brother. Jake, can you come over? I need company tonight. 2 hours later, we sat in my kitchen, working through a 6-pack of beer while I recounted the entire ordeal. Jake listened without interruption until I finished. Man, I'm so sorry, but you did the right thing. Living with that kind of betrayal, it eats you alive. The weird part? I saw it coming. All the signs were there. I just didn't want to believe it. You're not the first guy to trust his wife. Won't be the last to get burned either. We talked until 3 a.m., reminiscing about happier times, discussing my plans for the future. When Jake finally went home, I attempted to sleep in my bed. The sheets still smelled like Lucy's perfume, a scent that now made my stomach turn. Saturday morning brought a text from Lucy. Can we talk? Just to discuss logistics? Noon at the coffee shop on Main Street, I replied. She arrived precisely on time, looking exhausted and self-conscious. We claimed a corner table where our conversation wouldn't be overheard. I talked to Trent last night, she began. He feels horrible about everything. He should. He didn't know I was married at first. By the time I told him, we were already involved. So this started as a one-night stand? A drunken conference hookup? Something like that. At the Boston conference in February. 7 months ago. The timeline clicked into place. Her increased travel, the subtle changes in her appearance, the emotional distance between us. I fought it for weeks, tried to stay away from him. But then we got assigned to the same project team, and it just happened. And you never thought about just ending our marriage before starting another relationship? She looked down at her coffee cup. I convinced myself I could manage both. Keep you safe from the pain while exploring something that made me feel alive again. Exploring something? You make it sound like a hobby. It was a full-blown affair, Lucy. Hotels, jewelry, fake business trips. That's not exploration. That's an entirely separate life. I know, God, I know. I got in too deep and couldn't find a way out. We spent an hour working through practicalities. She'd move out completely by next weekend. We'd use the same realtor who sold her parents' house. Splitting proceeds would happen after the divorce was finalized. Will you tell people the real reason? She asked as we prepared to leave. I'll tell them we grew apart. No need to air dirty laundry. Thank you. I'm not doing it for you, I clarified. I don't want to be the guy whose wife cheated on him. I want to move on with dignity. The following weeks were a blur of paperwork, logistics, and emotional processing. Lucy moved back to her parents temporarily while looking for her own place. Trent apparently had his own apartment complex to handle. His ex-wife discovering their affair had triggered a custody battle over visitation rights. Our divorce proceeded smoothly, all things considered. Lucy didn't contest the terms, perhaps driven by guilt, perhaps by practicality. We avoided social media drama and public confrontations. To the outside world, we were simply another couple who drifted apart. 3 months after filing, I stood in what was now my house alone, the divorce papers finalized on my kitchen counter. I felt neither victorious nor devastated, just empty and oddly relieved. That evening, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Maria Rodriguez, Trent's ex-wife. My lawyer gave me your number. Just wanted to say I'm sorry we both went through this. And thank you for documenting everything so thoroughly. It helped my case immensely. I responded, I'm sorry you had to go through this too. Hope your kids are doing okay. They are. Kids are resilient. We adults should take notes. Her response made me smile for the first time in weeks. Maybe resilience was possible after all. 6 months later, I ran into Lucy at the grocery store. We nodded politely but didn't speak. She looked different, thinner, hair shorter, wearing a ring I didn't recognize. Trent, presumably, had made good on some promises. I went about my shopping, filling my cart with food for one, and the occasional frozen pizza. As I checked out, the cashier, a bubbly young woman named Stephanie, chatted about weekend plans. Doing anything fun? She asked. Having dinner with friends, actually. First time entertaining since moving. That's great. Starting fresh is always exciting. As I drove home, I reflected on her words. Starting fresh. Maybe that's exactly what this had been. Not an ending, but a clean slate. An opportunity to build something authentic rather than maintain something false. I'd lost a marriage but gained self-respect. Lost trust but retained integrity. Lost the life I thought I knew but found the strength to build something better. That night, unpacking groceries in my kitchen, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Genuine contentment. Not the forced happiness of denial, not the desperate optimism of hope, just simple peace with reality. My phone buzzed with a text from Mike. Saw your ex at Starbucks with the new guy. Thought you'd want to know she looks miserable. Thanks for the intel, but I'm good, I replied. Case closed on that chapter. And it was. Lucy's happiness or unhappiness no longer concerned me. Her new relationship with Trent could flourish or fail on its own merits. It had nothing to do with me anymore. I opened my laptop and started browsing online dating profiles. Not ready to seriously date yet, but curious about possibilities. Eventually, I'd find someone who valued honesty as much as I did. Someone whose business trips actually involved business. Someone who understood that authentic connection beats illicit excitement every time. For now, though, I was content with my own company. The house felt different without Lucy's deceptions filling the corners. Cleaner somehow, more honest. As I prepared dinner for one, I realized that truth, painful as it could be, was always better than comfortable lies. I'd faced the worst betrayal a marriage could endure and come out stronger, wiser, more determined to live authentically. The price of secrets had taught me that some discoveries, no matter how devastating, were worth their weight in freedom. And sometimes the best revenge truly was living well, separately, truthfully, and with an open heart ready for genuine love when it finally arrived.